See, now I can hear you. Okay, so we're learning the Likkutei Sichot Volume 1 for Parshas Bechukotai and Lag BaOmer. So today's Lag BaOmer. So we're not going to get to the section that starts Lag BaOmer, but we'll build it up. We have a few more days today. What day is it today? Today's Thursday, right? Wow. Yeah, so what we're going to do is, next week we're going to continue Bechukotai. Because I told you, as long as they're out of sync with us in outside of Israel. So, okay.
That's until Tisha.
Yeah, we've got plenty of time. All of Sefer B'Midbar we'll get to. With joy. התחלת הפרשה, אם בחוקותיי תלכו. Our parsha begins, if you follow my commandments, or my statutes, or my laws, then I will give you all these blessings. הגמרא אומרת, אין אם אלא לשון תחנונים. He gives us this very interesting explanation in the Gemara and the Avodah Zarah. And tell us that if is not if. It's please. It's I beg of you. I beg of you to follow my laws. כלומר, אין פירוש אם האמור כאן תנאי. It's not a condition as if usually is. The word if is usually a condition. וגם בפרשתנו, ואם לא תשמעו, ואם בחוקותיי, כי אם תחנונים. Even in our parsha, the word if sometimes, most of the time means conditional if. But rather here in the beginning of the parsha, it means that God is begging us to follow His commandments. It's like a mother who's telling her child, please. Yeah, it's an aim. If please. You can say it like that in Yiddish?
Es mein Kind.
Yeah. So it's S.
Eat. Like eat. Drink,
Es mein. Yeah. So it's like a mother begging her child to follow the right path because she doesn't want him to end up with the wrong life. So God is begging the Jewish people, follow my laws, so that you engage yourself, that your work should be in the Torah. הבקשה והציווי נותנים כוח ומהווים גם הבטחה לכל יהודי שבחוקותיי תלכו ככתוב לבלתי יידח ממנו נידח. So God doesn't beg because of feelings. In general, when the sages describe, or when the Torah describes that God has a certain feeling, it's not to tell us that He has emotions. We understand He has emotions anyway. Everything that's a description that God reacted like this or is like that is because it has it creates an actual change in reality. God doesn't tell us things about Himself in that sense, unless there's some effect, some change that this causes, practical change in reality. So it says, what's the practical change? Then when God asks you for something, He gives you the strength to do it. It's also, He says, not just the strength to do it, it's even a promise, meaning I'm begging you to follow this because eventually you will. And I'm begging you to do it out of your own free will. I can't force you to.
But I'm helping you.
But by begging you, I'm giving you the strength to follow this because I'm trying to give you the understanding, but also the energy to pursue this path. And this is called that no soul should be left exiled, meaning everything will come back to its place. Everything returns to its rightful place. So this is a commandment and a promise. He says, Shnei Inyanim, chapter 2, Shnei Inyanim, ציווי והבטחה, אנו מוצאים גם במצוות אהבת השם. We find the same thing, the Baal Shem Tov explained, by the mitzvah to love God. את הפסוק ואהבת את השם אלוקיך, מפרש אדמו"ר זקן, based on the Baal Shem Tov. So the verse says, you shall love Hashem your God. So says the Alter Rebbe, two things. Alecha lehov, you have an obligation to love, but it also means ve'ahavta, you can also read it, that's how it is in Hebrew, you shall love. It's also in English. You shall can be an obligation, but it can also be a promise about the future. You will eventually love God. There too, when it comes to the obligation or the promise that you will love God, the two explanations, as an obligation, as a promise, are connected to one another.
Future tense in Hebrew is ambiguous.
Right? Just like in English.
Yeah.
שכן הציווי מלמעלה מהווה גם נתינת כוח והבטחה כמוסבר לעיל. Because the way to create a certain future, the future that you envision, is by promising it. And you, in that sense, these are called self-fulfilling prophecies. Right?
We create our reality.
By telling you what the future is going to be like, I'm giving you the direction and I'm giving you the strength to go and pursue it. And that's a very important thing. It means that if a person cannot envision a future, they almost certainly will never be able to pursue it. And so you have to be able to see something in order to be able to muster the willpower to actually pursue it. That's why one of the most important things in any kind of task that I take on is that I have to see myself performing it also. Meaning before I start, I have to see myself finishing it. If I can't see myself finishing it, then I probably won't have the willpower to get through it. And I'll probably get stuck somewhere. I told you a few times that the Sun Tzu Art of War says that all the wars all battles are won in the temples before they're fought. And what they mean is that they used to meditate on seeing it happen. If you can't see it happening, you can't. So that's why God sends so many prophets.
On the eve of meeting
Right. He has to see it. He has to see what's going to happen. In fact, I won't get into it, but the ability to see something is not just a technical thing. You can't see something means that you don't have the prowess, you don't have the power to fulfill it. As you build your vision of the future, you're building your willpower. It's a very important thing. So we usually think of the prophets had two purposes that they served. God sent so many prophets. What did He send them for? So what everybody remembers that they sent the prophets to criticize us, to rebuke, to tell us what's wrong, and so on and so forth. But all of the prophets, without exception, every single one also painted a different future. Because it says, as much as I'm rebuking you, I can't leave you without the ability to change your ways. But to change your ways, I can't tell you change your ways. That doesn't do anything. That's just telling you what you're doing now is wrong. But I have to give you an alternative to where you are. If I can't paint an alternative, I'm not a prophet. I'm not God's messenger, because God is not just interested, like we say on Yom Kippur, "Ki lo tachfot b'mot hamet, ki im b'shuvo v'dorko michaya." You don't wait for us to die. You're not waiting to punish. You're waiting for us to repent and pursue a different path. But to do that, you have to present both sides of the argument. One is, what you're doing now is incorrect. But here's the option. Here's the alternative. And the alternative is given as a vision. This is what the future can look like. And that's how terrible Israeli politics is, because nobody has any picture of the future.
No vision at all.
Nothing. Everything is like, let's put out fires at most. And even that they don't do. But
Put somebody else on fire.
Yeah, set someone else on fire. Look here, don't look there. I'll show you a bigger fire. Again, that's what they do. There's no vision. And as a friend of mine likes to say, from its inception, basically, the state of Israel has had no dreams. No dreams at all. It doesn't know where it's going. No clue. I mean, its dream for a long time has been Sunnyvale. Right? It wants to be like San Francisco.
Startup nation.
That's as far as it's gone. So אהבת השם מהווה שורש לכל רמ"ח מצוות עשה, ובכללן גם למצוות יראת השם. The love of Hashem is the root of all the positive commandments, and included within them is fear of Hashem, or awe of Hashem, which is the root, שהיא שורש לכל שעשה מצוות לא תעשה, the root of all the 365 prohibited commandments. נמצא איפה שאהבת השם משמשת שורש לאכות תרי"ג המצוות. So because love is the source of even of awe, you have to love first and then you can have. Because you You can't have awe of something that you don't understand. To understand something, you have to love it. Love is coming close to something. I can say, a person can say, I have awe of God. I don't know what God is. If you don't love God, meaning if you don't love the good, you can't have awe of the good. You can't understand the significance of good. If you don't know what God represents, how can you have awe of it? So first you have to have love, you have to have a connection, you have to have an affinity to something. Once you have an affinity to something, then you can begin to have awe of it. Otherwise, you're just afraid of the unknown. And that's not being afraid of God. God is not the unknown in that sense. That's not, at least it's not that he's not unknown, he is unknown. But that's not what it means to have awe of God. It has to be awe of something that I can understand. When a person doesn't have any connection with the king, so you can't say that he has fear of the king or awe of the king, because he doesn't know what it means. If he understands, at least, I don't know, that the king can punish him. Okay, so that's some understanding. That's called love. Well, why is it love? Because love is affinity. I understand what that means. I have some understanding of what that means. If I have some understanding, I can begin to have awe of it. So in that sense, love of God is the root of all the 613 commandments. כשם שלאהבה ישנם ציווי והבטחה, כך גם לכל תרי"ג המצוות נכללות בפסוק אם בלשון תחנונים וגם בלשון הבטחה בחוקותיי תלכו ובמצוותיי לשמור ועשיתם אותם. So just as love has both, as we said, an obligation and a promise and a vision that this is what you will come to love, so all the mitzvos have. All the mitzvos, on the one hand, they're an obligation. On the other hand, by God commanding them, He's given us the strength to do them by picturing it for us, what it looks like. It's not in legal language. It's very interesting. The Torah never pictures something. The Gemara follows this very strongly. That you don't teach people by talking abstract with abstract concepts. You have to picture a picture. You have to show a certain reality. So the Torah is always discussing an ox and a donkey and this and that, and the person does this and the person does that. Always, because you have to envision it. If you can't envision it, you don't understand it. You can't connect to it. So the Torah is very pictorial in that sense, and the Gemara also is all the time. The Gemara, even when it's discussing something abstract, it right away gives an example. And right away brings in, and there was this person who did so and so. And then you begin to think about the example, then you begin to really connect to it. So the same thing is about all the mitzvahs. That's the meaning of the first verse of our parsha. Bechukotai that he's both instructing us, but he's also promising us, or in this case, pleading with us, that we should go in that direction. Chapter 3. פירוש נוסף יש לבחוקותיי שהכוונה למצוות. So we started out by saying that what he's pleading with us is to not to not separate ourselves from him. That's really the beginning of our parsha. It's not talking about all the commandments yet. It's just saying, if you'll be with me, says God, then all these good things will happen. But he says there's another meaning that really does mean the mitzvahs. It means following the commandments. And there are 3 types of mitzvahs. This is a famous thing that was later written up as a pamphlet. The Khan wrote this up as a pamphlet. It's a very important explanation. There are 3 types of mitzvahs: mishpatim, eidot, vechukim. Mishpatim means laws, but really we would say rational laws, meaning laws that we understand. We understand the meaning, we understand the reasoning behind them, and so on. Call it reasonable laws. Eidot, which is testaments. What we mean by that is there are mitzvahs that we do because they're a testament to something else. Meaning it's not the mitzvah in itself is always a commemoration of something else. It's testifying to something else. So for instance, keeping Shabbos is a testimony, like we saw, to God's creating the world. The chukim, and then there are the irrational laws, the laws that we can't understand, that we can't find a reasonable reason for. For instance, why should you shech the animal from here and not from there? Because the Torah says you have to shech in some way. And by the way, why do I need to shot? Maybe I could just shoot it in the head. Why can't I hunt?
Might be kinder.
Maybe kinder. Maybe. I could maybe say that's kinder, but I think a lot of people would say today, and that's what they do, that they don't slaughter anymore the way we do. They have this, sorry for being gory, but they have this metal rod that it aligns the animal's head and it pumps in and out, and within a millisecond they're dead. So in terms of is it more kind or not? I don't know. Maybe what they're using now is better, and it presents. That's why in European countries they sometimes outlaw ritual slaughter, because they say it's not kind. So
Our method of slaughter was meant to make clear exactly what we're doing.
okay, what do you mean?
Spilling blood. We're spilling blood.
Okay. So we don't know for sure that we understand these laws. We have maybe some idea, but we're not sure. So these are the three categories of mitzvahs, of commandments. And now he explains them as we just did. Mishpatim הם המצוות שהשכל עצמו היה מחייבן, גם ממלא צוותה התורה עליהם. So the commandments that are reasonable laws are those that we would have done anyway. Any reasonable society would enact these laws anyway. עדות הן המצוות שהשכל כשלעצמו לא היה אומנם מחייבן, ולאחר שהתורה ציוותה עליהן יש להם מקום בשכל. So he says, testimonies, they make sense. Meaning, I wouldn't have known about it if the Torah wouldn't have told me. But now that it tells me, I understand why. So these are called testaments, that they're testifying to something else. And the Torah told me to testify to it, so I understand what I'm testifying to. I understand why this would be connected one to the other. בחוקים הם המצוות שאין להם כל מקום בשכל. כשהתנז, פרה אדומה ודומיהם. So the laws that are unreasonable, that have no logical basis that we can find, are like shatnez, not mixing wool and linen, or not, or the paraduma, the red heifer, that's how you purify from being right. The whole question itself is, forget about whether it purifies the impure or makes impure the pure. So this is a very fact. Why would taking why does it have to be a red heifer without a single, without two white hairs or any other color?
Turn it into ashes.
And turn it into ashes, and you add it to what's the whole thing? It's mainly doubt. What is this whole thing? כתוב אומר Bechukotai. So it says the verse doesn't call them mitzvos. It doesn't say im b'mitzvotai terechu. And then it could be calling the mitzvahs by their general name. And rather it refers to them as chukim, as these unreasonable, unbased laws. Now, even though it's talking about all the mitzvahs, and we said that many of the mitzvahs we do understand why. ללמוד שגם את העדות ואת המשפטים, אף שיש להם מקום בשכל, יש לקמם בקבלת עול, כדרך שמקיימים חוקים, חוקה חקקתי, גזירה גזרתי. So again, this is a very important basis of all Chabad Hasidus, and the Rebbe didn't invent this, is that the Torah calls all of them chukim, the unbased laws, the ones that have no reasonable explanation, because it's trying to tell us, not that there's no reasonable explanation for all of them, that's not, you could argue that, but I don't think it would be right. I think that we do connect to many of them and we understand the reasoning behind it, but that we need to perform them as if they're all laws that have no basis. Meaning that I can't, when I'm performing the mitzvah itself, I should not have in my mind that I understand the reason. I'm performing it because I was commanded to. And we said that we've talked about this many times. When I put on tefillin, and Moshe Rabbeinu put on tefillin, it's the same tefillin. Because it doesn't matter how much Moshe knows more than I do about tefillin. Because when we perform the mitzvah, it's the act itself. And the act itself is the same across the board. That's the great equalizer. The physical world is the great equalizer. It makes everything the same. And so when you accept the yoke of heaven, and you do this because God commanded you, so it doesn't matter how much you know. It's not telling you don't know. It's not telling you, be an imbecile and don't learn. It's just saying that when you perform it because you were commanded. Not because of your reasoning, not because it makes sense to you. Right. I'm doing it. So even then, maybe there's a again. But again, the reasoning is because I was commanded to. And I said that this is maybe the principle in Chabad is because what is it that really? And now I'm saying a reason. It's kind of funny. I'm saying a reason on something that I'm telling me just to approach just as because I'm commanded. But I think that this reasoning is important. That in the end, the Alter Rebbe's way of looking at the world is that there must be something that unifies us. Because I can't expect other people to believe what I believe. In fact, you can find in Judaism a wealth of beliefs that, every single, what the sages say, just as people's faces are different, their opinions are different. So your opinion, someone's opinion about why this mitzvah is good or that or this, or what is God like, or anything you want, and take any topic, you'll find the full gamut of opinions, not just in simple people, but even in what's written. You'll find that the Rambam thinks the opposite from the Rambam. And the Rambam thinks the opposite from the Ravid. And the Ravid is so angry at the Rambam. He says, what an imbecile. He always calls him names. Greater people than him have already thought differently. So what do you learn from that? That you can't force people, Judaism is not dogma. It doesn't tell you how you need to believe. In the end, says the Alter Rebbe, you become Jewish by performing mitzvahs. That is the great equalizer. That is what unifies us. The acts. Not the emotions and not the understanding, not the intellect. Because in that we are destined to always have different worlds in each of us. And we won't necessarily agree.
I think it's helpful to distinguish between reason and benefit. I mean, if you located one of the benefits or a couple of the benefits, we're not calling that God's reasoning.
Right.
Why don't you give me 20 shekels? I have to run.
It's like 50.
I'll run it in 20. Remind me to give it back to tomorrow. Do you remember to give it
So
back?
welcome.
How do you have to remember to give you 20 now? I've got to remember to give you
So I
50.
guess I have to go down. I'm the only one who's not used up. Can actually be still used for davening.
It's great.
Is that